Hi guys, hope you've had a sensational day. Tonight we're going to be sharing 3 top tips that will help develop positive eating habits for your children that will serve them well into their adulthood. You know, research does show that childhood experiences directly affect personality traits in adulthood. So, you know, what children are taught and or observe in their early years naturally becomes part of their characteristics and behaviours they adopt for all of their life. So as parents, grandparents and carers, it's important that we are aware of this connection and the environment we are bringing our children up in, especially when it comes to food and eating habits. All right, so I've got some heavy stats, so hold on just for a second, but these are really important. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics, Statistics National Health Survey showed in 2017-2018, 2/3, which is about 67% of Australian adults, are overweight or obese. Crazy. So that's actually over 12.5 million people. And it's really alarming that that was actually a 63.4% increase from their survey the year before, which is a 2014 to 15. So the numbers are increasing. Quite scary. Now, the national survey also indicated the same time period in 2017 to 18 that almost 1/4, 25% of children aged 5 to 17 years are overweight or obese. Breaking that down, that 17% of children were overweight and 8.1% were obese. So this is something that's really important. So the question is, you know, how can we help our children to develop positive eating habits that will foster healthy habits right through their whole life? Well, we're so thrilled, as always, to be joined with Sarah Smith, and she's a founder and dietitian from Bayside Dietetics to find out how. Now, Sarah works in a private practice in Bayside, Melbourne, after working for an extended period within the Monash Children's Hospital, and Sarah thrives on helping children and their families work towards the freedom from the limits of food concerns, reactions, and difficulties. How you doing, Sarah?
Well, thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Oh, as always. And so we published your article recently, A Fish Out of Water, Is This Happening to My Child? Now, in the article, you speak about a children's book, which I think is just awesome and it's gorgeous, and it's titled A Fish Out of Water. So can you tell us a little bit about the correlation about the children's book and positive eating behavioural habits for children? And yeah, just that correlation.
Yeah, and how good is the book? I remember that one from my childhood. It's one of those stand-up books that stays with you. But I thought the story too has a lot of logic because, as you outlined in your introduction, Rach, is weight's a big concern, and children's weight is something that's really important to parents. And that the logic that's described in the books makes a lot of sense. If you keep feeding a child, your child's going to keep on eating, and they're going to keep on getting bigger. Of course, the analogy in the book is that it's the fish being fed, and Otto the fish keeps on getting bigger and needs to be housed in bigger and bigger tanks until he's in a swimming pool. But we're really talking about, is that same thing happen for kids? And logic, you know, really with that says, yeah, you know, think through it. Yeah, that might happen. But in actual fact, all the evidence that we have is that your child does not have an endless appetite, will not continuously eat. So I really wanted to give parents a different option, a bit more information on what actually really happens, and really that crucial element of, can you trust your child around food and let them judge how much to eat?
Yeah. So well, let's get stuck into the 3 key questions, because I think everything else flows on from what you've just said. So yep. So we've got 3 questions. Question number 1 is, you know, within the article you share 5 tips to help support children with their eating habits into adulthood. Could you maybe just give us an overview of what your 5 sort of key tips are?
Yeah. So the first one is that big key one. It's a really challenging thing, but it's something I think parents listening to this might hear for the first time and consider it from here. And that is that you can actually trust your child around food. And by that, I'm saying that they have got a really intact ability to be able to work out how much food to eat. And if you provide the type of food you want your child to be eating, they'll be able to do the rest and work out how much. So that first big number 1 is to trust them. Then to give them support to be able to do that properly, they need a predictable routine. That will be tip number 2. Yep. Number two would be a really predictable. So your child needs to know that how much they eat for lunch, when's the next meal. So do they need to eat to cover them for the next 6 hours until dinner time, or do they just need to eat because they've got a predictable afternoon tea coming, so it's only 3 hours they have to get through. So if your child knows when the meals are coming and has a really predictable kind of routine to their day around food, they'll find it much easier to do tip number one of trusting their appetite. Following on from there, to go even further with your predictable mealtime routine would be actually sit down to have it. So really getting your child to register that they're eating food and really getting to think about, hey, I'm here at a mealtime. This is when I do my job of eating. And then after this mealtime, the mealtime's over and, I get off and do something different. So really sitting down for all those meals and snacks.
So you're saying at the same time to give them a routine, so if they, so they understand that mum and dad are going to feed me at this time, and I know my belly's going to be full. So so you're saying the routine's really important.
Routine's really important, yeah. And then tip number three to extend on that would be to sit down for that meal. So if it's afternoon tea, sit down and have it and really register for that. Yeah.
Yep. And you say to sit down for snacks also, don't you?
Yeah. If ideal world, if you really want to be supporting your child, sitting down is actually quite important. You can still register a snack, so have your child stop an activity and just stop to have a snack, and that's a pretty good effort. But if you're really wanting to say, hey, I want to do the best for my child, you would actually sit down and really stop and pause and make that time just about the food.
And do you say that from what perspective, to ensure that the body then is absorbing all of the nutrients from the food and or from the mindfulness, or is there anything?
Good question. It's more about the second option of what you said, more about the mindfulness. Really has them really registering that they're sitting down and their job is to sit at that table and to eat. There's no other activities going on. It's just about enjoying that food and being really present with the food.
Yes. Yeah.
And then tip number four is, I'm going to do the reverse. I'm going to tip number 5 first, and that would be to role model to your children. So if you are now in this really wonderful mealtime routine and you sit down or that your kids sit down to have a snack, if you can sit down and have it with it, it's so important and so helpful for your children. So role modeling and eating at the same time with them is a really helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
And then the last tip would be, when you role model all the different types of food. So you're obviously role modeling, having vegetables with dinner, for example, is a really, traditional healthy habit to do. But also role model, how do you sit down and enjoy a piece of cake? So all those kind of forbidden or tricky or naughty or whatever you want to call it, role model how to have those foods as well.
So you're saying it's okay. So I think in the article you say it's okay to eat a piece of cake, but demonstrate that that's something that we may not have every day, but that's something that we would have in a celebration type of a scenario. So we would have that, and that would be something that we would sit and we would enjoy, but we wouldn't necessarily have it all the time. Is that right?
Exactly right. And your child will pick that up by the action. So if you really sit down for a piece of cake, but when you do, or do you enjoy it, your kid picks up on all the joy of the cake, and also picks up that it's not very often you get to do it. So you don't even need to say the words, this is what we do and this is why we do it. Your kid will just get it if you're role modeling that for them.
Yeah. So let's go through so number 1 again was?
That's a trusting your child's appetite. Trust your child that they can do that job properly.
Yep. And that they know when they're hungry and or when they want to eat. Yep. Number 2?
Yep. Is provide a really predictable mealtime routine.
Yep. At the same time, so they know and so they can expect when they're going to eat at the same time every day, which is good, which was going to stop them from overeating then and or picking and snacking and whatnot. They know, which is great. Number 3 was?
It's to sit down to have all those meals and snacks.
Yep. And that was for the mindfulness, like you just said, as well, mainly. Yep. Number 4, sorry, if I can
get the parents involved in role modeling food and how to do all this.
Yep. And number 5 was?
Extends on that to say role model how to do the naughty stuff too. How do you eat a piece of cake?
Yep. And everything is in moderation, I guess, as well, potentially. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Awesome tips. All right, so let's get into question number 2. In your experience, at what age do you find children are most influenced by their parents' eating habits?
I would say that the strongest evidence that we always get is the under 5 age group. That always seems to have the consistency of lasting impacts for them. So if you're going to hit with a time frame, under 5s would be it. However, I find all age groups really, really important. People coming to see me about weight concerns for their child in all sorts of different age groups, and it's not like suddenly an age was relevant. There's just patterns of behaviour over time. So any age is important too.
And do you find that under 5s is generally because the brain is like, I think 95% of a child's brain develops by the age of 5. So is it because of that neurological sort of growth of their brain? That's why you find that's why they're most influenced, or is there anything else? Maybe potentially because of with the age gap that you found in your experience, that's why they're most influenced by their parents' eating habits at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that is a big part of it, 100%, that you know, like your language and things like that. You think of what happens before 5 and after 5. Same sort of thing with the brain development around food. You're spot on, Rachel, with that. But there would be more physical stuff to it too. So, for example, one of the things we know about the gut and the healthy gut in kids is that if you can get that really healthy and set before a child is 5, they're going to keep that with them for a lot longer period, whereas changes after 5 years of old seem to be a little bit they don't last as long. So below 5 you can make changes that are really going to be sustainable, and the kid sort of gets has those physical changes that last them for the rest of their life, and after that it's harder to get the sustainability of the change.
And how do you find that would potentially sort of affect obesity? Is there any correlation with childhood obesity at all?
Good question. I'm not sure about the evidence with the under 5s to that. I suppose for me, I'm always working with somebody that comes in and says, "Hey, this is something that's really important to me right now. What can I do from here?"
Yeah. And so you mentioned before the importance of having children develop a healthy gut. Hang on for a second. My dog is just wanting to talk to me. Mummy's busy at the moment, Jan. I'm so sorry about this. Sorry.
Oh.
I think he's going to, and I'm just betting too. Sorry about that. So you mentioned about a healthy gut is really important for children. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on why you think that's so important at a young age to develop, you know, sort of that physiologically, if I can say the word?
Yeah, I almost feel like saying hold this space, because there's going to be more and more evidence on that exact question over the next few years. It's really pouring out at the moment, the benefits of a healthy gut. But the topic we're talking about tonight, the weight, actually is relevant to that too. There is a relationship between a gut being really healthy and a child's weight for the rest of their lives. So it is a good one. And we did if anyone's interested in gut health and going, well, what's that? And tell me more about that. You and I did a interview just recently about that.
Yes.
Going through the Wikipedia historical videos, and you'll be able to pick up the video on gut health and hear a bit more.
Yeah, fantastic. All righty. Well, let's get stuck into question number 3 then. You know, some parents may find especially with the children that are sort of on the higher scale from a weight perspective, it may be easier to put children, I hate to say the word, but onto a diet per se to lose the weight. In your experience, is this the best method, or how do you find it is best for parents to help monitor their children's sort of weight so it's in a healthy scale?
Yeah. And that's I think that's a really good question, because that would be what a lot of parents would actually come in and ask me too, because it's when you're feeling like something's really important to you to help out your child, you want to be doing all that you can to look after them on that. And a lot of times a prescription, you know, clear answer, black and white answer, is a really nice, easy thing to follow. And so it can feel really good. So something like a diet can feel like a really nice solution. You've got this problem with the weight, so let's use a diet to fix that, and we'll get the solution that we're after.
Yeah.
The only trouble is that we know that diets for children do more harm than good.
Okay.
So it feels like it's really logical and feels like it might be a really helpful thing to do. In actual fact, from all the evidence we get, is actually really unhelpful. The reason for that, it goes against probably the tip number 1 that we talked about in this, in terms of trusting your child. All of a sudden you're prescribing things to your child, and your child's got no responsibility around food, so they're not being trusted around food. That one crucial point of the blog. And then they will sort of disengage with, you know, whether they're hungry, whether they're full, and they'll just eat because that's what's on the diet plan. And so in the short term, you might get results and weight loss from that. But in the long term, your child being out of the habit of using their appetite is actually going to start overeating or undereating because they don't know how to follow their appetite anymore. So what you know, initially feels like a really nice thing to do with diets, in actual fact, is going to be really unhelpful in the long term. But I do understand that it's a thing that we get in the media a lot. It feels like a really nice thing to do. So I do understand where it's coming from, and the place where parents are really just trying to say, hey, what can I do to help my child? But this blog really tries to say, hang on, that's an unhelpful solution because of the downside that you're creating at the same time. Instead, here, why don't you try something that's quite different and quite hard to do in terms of trusting your child, and that's going to help them serve them much better for the long term.
So you're saying, as opposed to putting them onto a diet, is to develop healthy eating habits consistently all the time. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah, and then you've probably brought up this really nice word in there, consistently.
Yeah.
That's it. A diet is never going to have a consistency to it. Their diets aren't really designed for the long term. They're designed for really short-term outcomes. And so if you can do something instead that feels like you can do it forever for your child, that's a much better place to be. And I'm hoping that the tips, those 5 tips that we ran through earlier, are things that people feel like they can do forever. Now, in terms of, you know, whether you have to do it every single day and be really strict with it, no, you don't. It's got flexibility to it. But if you can have a really rough routine to your day, even if it's lunchtime, somewhere between 12 and 1, to the minute doesn't matter, but your child knows that lunch is somewhere in a predictable kind of realm. If you can role model, even if it is Friday, Saturday and Sunday when the family are actually, it's easier together, you know, sure, it's not the consistency every day, but if that's going to work for you and you think, yeah, I can do that for the long term, that's going to be much more helpful for your child than a short-term diet.
Yeah. It's so when I was younger, I studied dance, and I ended up having a career out of it. But at the age of 12, being Italian and maybe starting to sort of to go more through that puberty, my body shape started changing. So my mum took me to a dietitian, and to be able to understand healthy eating habits. Of course, this was a very long time ago, but that taught me at a very young age to not have full cream milk, not to have sugar, portion sizes, not to eat after 8 o'clock. And these are just things off the top of my head, but I have adapted those for my whole entire life. And I completely agree with you that teaching children better habits from experience early on in life is something that they will develop for the rest of their life, because it becomes habit more so than anything else. So is this what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. And even your example you picked up, you sort of spoke about don't eat after 8 o'clock, for example. Now, if the dietitian had said to you, right, don't eat after 6 o'clock, there's no way you could have done it for more than a week. That would have been this really short-term diet that might have, sure, you ate a whole lot less because not eating after 6 is going to cut out a large part of your meal, but it was something more realistic in terms of saying, right, for you, can you get your eating done? So after 8 o'clock, eating's out. So something like that, if that's the solution that works for your child, but you can do it with the consistency, that's a much more helpful thing to do than your strict diet. Yep. Yeah. And that I suppose comes down to that predictable routine. If the meal routine doesn't have eating at that time, you know, that's example of that.
And another thing at that time I recall doing was keeping a food diary, and it was just writing down what I was eating. And I remember going to a dance lesson and my dance teacher saying, so what have you eaten today, Rachel? So I came home from school and I had 3 pikelets, and I had this and I had that. And that was before my dance class. I was going to go home and then eat a big bowl of pasta or something like that. And it wasn't until I started documenting what I was eating that I was like, oh my goodness, I'm actually consuming well over my daily calorie amount that I should be for my age and my height, my weight. So do you think, is that something that you suggest that parents should be doing if they're wanting and needing to be able to gauge the children's weight, to be able to bring them back into that healthy sort of scale? This is something that they should be doing maybe?
It's a really good question. I would wonder the long-term impact of that. And it's
Yeah.
not saying that I've got the answer to that, but I'd be really curious about the child and what it would be like for the child to go through that. Worked really well. But it would be something that would start to unhook you from your trust in your body. So if you are worried about sort of a calorie intake, for example, it's saying, right, what does the script say rather than what does my body say? And my curiosity or my sort of suggestion in this blog is to say, hang on a minute, let's actually trust our bodies and let's be able to use them. And I think probably the best example, sorry, I've got a fly buzzing around me. The best example of how we can trust our bodies, and we accept everyone here, hey? Would be breastfeeding children. So if you think of a child and breastfeeding kids do not need a script to know how many meals to drink. They don't need to know how long to be on the boob for. They just know when they don't feel good that they're hungry, that they're distressed by that, and they know exactly how much to drink to fill their tummies and get enough to drink. So it's a really, really healthy relationship with their body and getting what they need. And that relationship doesn't change. The body's always really good at working out how much to need. And all body shapes are different, but it's what's your body shape, how much you need to eat for your body shape and to nourish that. Without the need of an external. And it's only through life that typically do we start to have interference to that. Say, for example, if I sort of think of some examples of, what I might have been told, or people my age might have been told, is that finish your vegetables so you can have dessert. So you sort of, no matter how hungry or full you are, you keep on eating because you want to get to that dessert, and then you're even quite full by the end of that. But gosh, that dessert's good, so you're going to have it. So it's that kind of thing that starts to unhook this beautiful relationship that you have when you're born without working out how much to eat. And so only when you get to a point where you're really struggling to know how much am I supposed to eat, what am I supposed to do we start to look at calories and saying, well, let me have this sort of external thing to guide me. Now, as I said, sometimes that might be a really helpful thing for people, but I would say most of the time it just reinforces that same habit of the body not being trusted and that long-term damage that might cause. So probably in your, to come back to your original question, I would be getting, probably support with that kind of answer. I wouldn't be doing a food diary with a child, or you might, but you wouldn't let your child know, unless you've really spoke to somebody professional about that yep. And the sort of the risk versus the benefit of doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's really good insight, and it's one of those things that's just sort of just taken from my experience, but that's really good to know. So what you're saying ultimately is to trust, and as you say in the 5 key points, to trust the child actually knows their own body, how much they should be eating, when they should be stopping. Is that right?
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And that it skips over a really big point, and that is what to feed the child. But that's a different blog, and that's a different chat that you and I can have at some stage. But this is about saying, hey, this is what the kid actually can be trusted to do. You give them a predictable meal time. You show them with role modeling how to do it, and let them do the rest.
Yeah. Well, you've given us some fantastic insights tonight. For everybody watching, the link to the articles and introduction paragraph here, so please click on that and have a read. Now, if anyone else has got any other questions or they want to find you, where can they find you?
I am, and my new website went live today. So
congratulations! That's
good. Yeah, it does feel good. It's at www.baysidedietetics.com.au, and that's quite hard to spell. So sometimes going through Kidipedia is the best way to get there.
All right, sensational. So everybody else, we'll have the links to Sarah's new website now, so we all can have a look. Once again, thanks so much for your time. Can't wait to chat again, and we'll speak soon. Give my love to the kids. Mwah. Speak soon.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.